Well, good morning. My name is LaPera. I work for TLC Engineering Solutions, and this is Nick Dalesandro, who is not me, and he works for DTCC. Nick, you can say what DTCC is.
So, team handles about a million and a half square feet around the world, but today we're just going to be focusing on one of the projects that we did at our Tampa location with Al.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to talk about a little bit is, and if you don't mind, you can read all that other stuff if you'd like. This was the original slide before they changed it. Talk about what we're going to learn. I like to start out all presentations. Okay. Well, what I'm going to talk about a little bit, I like to start out all presentations with a note, and I think this one is kind of apropos if you start to think about it, is, as it says, knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad, right? As much as I love tomatoes, but do I really want them with strawberries, right? One of my staff members would probably argue with that because I get a salad all the time that has tomatoes and fruit in it, so it's not really true, but I wouldn't put it in a Waldorf salad. Let's think about it that way, right? What we're going to learn about here today is what is an audit, what you need to understand. Everybody's been here today, through this workshop here for the past 2 days, and you'll find some people that will argue differently about what an energy audit is and what retro commissioning is. In my opinion, they both kind of dovetail together. A retro commissioning process is you have to understand what the building needs to do. So we learn, going through every building, we have a lot of things we have to do, but you have to understand how is a successful audit conducted. Well, as I put up there, there's a few things you'll see. The client is the most important thing. Without them, you don't have a project, and but then again, there's Nick, and then I unfortunately have to work for Nick. He's a nice guy, but I have to work for him, so I have to make him happy. And then there's the opportunities. You have to prioritize where the money's going to come from. Every project has a different funding source. If you work for a client, they may fund it directly. They may have PACE loans. They may have to go out and do a, what's what I was going to look for? I said PACE loan, get a loan actually. Or you may do some performance contracting where the savings pay back the loan. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. All right. Simply put, an energy audit is the determination of what energy is being consumed in a building. If I tell you any more than that, it's like, I'm just going to be going blah, 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 okay? And like Drac, I don't say blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to tell you that. All right, you're a tough crowd. Nobody likes to laugh. If you're not laughing, we're in trouble here because this whole thing is meant to be funny. So if nobody's laughing, I'm having a problem today. All right, you got to understand, I said that before, who is your decision maker? Well, in my opinion, the decision maker is the owner. And now, while I have a very close relationship with Nick, Nick still has, I went to him. Now, he has somebody that we've met originally, which is his facilities person, which is this guy, Mike. Mike is a great guy, but if I only focused on Mike as being my client, I may not have done half the work that I did, or our company did for them, because Mike can't make that decision. Nick can make the decision, but then he still has somebody over him that he has to go and say why this is a good idea and why we help. We're constantly supporting Nick in ideas he wants to go after, and we give him backup support so he can go and sell the idea. So you're going to start to see that there was a couple of things done by, it's a fascinating study that was done by the Institute of Real Estate Management, and they talked about where decisions get made. Well, if you think about it, there are two different ways. There's portfolio ownership, which I'm going to talk about here for a second, and what that is, those are the people that own their properties, okay? And if you start to look at, like here, who is responsible for the day-to-day? Well, in this, you can see it's kind of, there's the building managers and the building engineering teams are the two people that make the day-to-day decision. But if you look over here, who's responsible to make the final decision, the big one says right here is the operations executive. Okay? So you understand who your audience is. That's really important. If you've been focusing on that person right there, that's not the right person. They can't help you get decisions that you need to make a project successful. Well, then there's the other type, which is the third-party service. Does everybody here understand what a third-party service is? All right? Has anybody done any work where your client is Cushman & Wakefield or Jones Lang LaSalle? That's a third party. It's owned by there's an asset manager that could be New York Life or somebody who owns the building, but they have somebody to operate it. That's a whole nother set of criteria you have to deal with. Yes, you have to go through on the day-to-day. Sorry. You're seeing a lot of stuff there. There we go. The building manager takes care of the day-to-day stuff. But when you look at who makes the final decision, it's the asset manager. It has nobody to do with the third-party service. It's who the person from MetLife, from TIAA-CREF, or whoever you're dealing with. That's going to make the decision. But you need the building manager to get you to that person.
I think one thing to add, Al, is we kind of have a hybrid approach to that, where I have some facilities. We own some buildings, we lease some facilities. There's some facilities that we manage, we self-perform. Here in Tampa, it's a self-perform model. But some of our sites in Asia will hire Cushman & Wakefield, and they operate our facilities 100%. But yet, I'm still the relationship manager. So if Al was doing a project, it's good for him to know Cushman & Wakefield in Asia, but he also ought to know that DTCC, it's still going to be Nick in our case. So it's just something to keep in mind to reinforce Al's point here. Yeah,
and like I said before, you hope you get along with the guy you have to work with, because if you don't, he could take you everywhere or take you nowhere. And it's kind of funny. I've been trying, I'm not sure where I want to go to India right now, but we talked about that last night, so that's a possibility. But the reality of it is how good of a relationship that you have and understand who you're working with. And that's really, you're going to hear that over and over again. That is an important thing to understand, who you're working with. All right, rules of engagement. You really need to know your client. I'll talk about that in a little bit more, but why do you need to know your client? Is you need to understand what their goals are. It's not what your goals are, it's what their goals are. I've met more and more auditors that go in and and they're all hopped up on sustainability, which is a great thing. But you better make sure that whatever you're selling them is what they want. Now you can talk to them about what's a strategy and what are good things that they should be doing, but I think Nick will talk about a little bit later, is you're finding more and more Fortune 500 companies are more worried about sustainability on a global level than you would even think about. Let's forget about Lee, let's forget about the well buildings, let's forget about any of that. Sustainability in general is a bigger thing than most people will give it credit for. When you hear people say that the greenwashing of stuff and that's gone and that's dying, it's not dying, not at the corporate level, not at those big companies. You just don't see it.
Yeah, I could tell you probably on an average basis, there's 3 to 4 times a month I'm supporting our HR and marketing group because potential customers of DTCC are sending in RFPs and they're asking about sustainability and they're asking about our environmental impact. So it's really important to a lot of companies and our customers.
All right, one of the other things you're going to do, you have to see what the opportunities you will have in their buildings, prioritize them, how to prioritize the ECMs that you find, and then you'll look at, you got to follow the money, reality, and the pathway. All right, prioritization of everything is that, I just said it a second ago, the priority shall reflect the client's priorities and their direction, not yours. If you want a project to fail, think only about yourself. You're the one that's the most important. You are not. Your client is the most important thing you have to deal with. That is the secret to success. My opinion, obviously. But it's worked for us, I think, pretty well because, I got, and I'll say this, I got one of the greatest compliments ever from Mike. Mike works for Nick. And Mike asked me one day, he asked me if I was ever in business for myself. And I said, no. He goes, you wouldn't know that by the way you act. You worry about us as a client, that your future depends on our success of you working for us. I said, you're right, it does. That was a great compliment as far as in my book. That meant they understood there wasn't just a job. Their success was hinged on what we did for them, and they appreciated what we did. All right, so obviously, let's think about it. While Nick is a PE, which is unusual, I will tell you that. We deal with a lot of facilities people that are facilities people, and they're not engineers. Turns out that DTCC has their head is a mechanical PE, their second in charge is an electrical PE. So, so when you send drawings to them and they're reviewing them, they're not like the guys going, oh, well, let's see, do I have enough clearance? No, they're asking about why you did this, why you did that, what's the payback. So it's a lot different. It's very refreshing. Very challenging at times. It really is. Nick challenges us all the time to think outside the box. We think outside the box. We try to do that anyway, but if we didn't, he would challenge us. I don't think I'd be sitting here doing this presentation with him if we didn't think outside the box and a lot of things for him. All right, you got to prioritize the ECMs. All right, one thing you just have to say, I'm not going to read this to you because that's one of those 101 things, never read what's up on the slide, point by point. Because if you do that, then why am I standing here? I should just put it up there and let you read it, right? What I mean by you need to understand their goals, almost everybody has, corporately some sort of sustainable goals that they have. One of our clients wants to save 30% energy on their entire portfolio, which is 200 buildings, by the year 2030. You should know that before you sit down. They should probably have, if this is the first time you're sitting down with a client, you should have already looked up what their sustainable goals are. Understand what they are before you go and sit down with them. One, it shows how interested you are in their company, and it also tells you if they don't have any, well then now you can talk to them about a roadmap. You could talk to them about master planning. I think our relationship started replacing cooling towers in 2012. That's how we started. We just replaced some cooling towers. We thought outside the box to replace the 3 towers. Nick, you weren't there yet. I think you and Craig were still in New Jersey at that point. But the other thing I think is almost as important, understand what your metrics is. What are you going to measure? Right? Or otherwise you don't know if is it an EUI? Is it a KBTU per person? Whatever it is, but at least understand that when you start out. So it can measure it at the end of the day. All right, how to prioritize. Well, you have to look at what they want you to do and what they have. I'll give you a real quick example. We had a client down in Miami. They called us in to do a chiller replacement. If most engineers would have just did the chiller replacement and did nothing else. So I was talking about the job in Miami. The reason I bring that one up, as an engineering firm, we were brought in to replace the chillers. They wanted to replace the chillers. As we're walking through the facility, what did we see? All the lights in the building were T12s. All right? You go, God, why would you still have T12s? So instead of doing that, we went in, look, instead of you giving us money to do a chiller replacement, why don't you let us do a lighting retrofit, and next year we'll change the chillers out and we'll put smaller ones in. That's exactly what we did. Again, did we make as much money on that lighting retrofit? Absolutely not. But we got a client that said, we thought about them. We didn't think about our pocketbook. We still make money. I don't want anybody, it's not like we did it for free and we just took the money and we prioritized to them, showing them a better way of doing things. I'm sure corporately if my CEO or COO right now, if they could kick me in the shins, they'd be kicking me, telling me I shouldn't be telling our inner secrets. I look at it this way: if you do a good job for somebody, you will continue to get work. So, but I think this is the most important thing right here. you have to manage your client's expectations. Okay? What do they want? Not what you want. I keep saying that, and hopefully at the end of this you'll understand that. It's what the client wants you to achieve. All right? Because that's what you're, that's what you're doing for them, All right, how to prioritize them, I'm gonna go through all this real simple. But what you have to look at is, you wanna do you should always prioritize them. What is the feasibility of doing something? What are the low cost and no cost? And in other words, what is a short ROI or payback period? Those are the first couple that you should be doing. All right, they may have some bigger ones, but you do those, and those little smaller EUIs, projects that you do, may fund the next project. That's the way you should be thinking about it. The money I'm saving on this will hopefully fund the next project. All right, how are projects funded? Well, like I said a little bit before, there's a lot of different ways. And understand what your client wants to do. If they're gonna self-fund it, well, how much money do they have? Nobody has endless amount of money. You may have to do things on a master planning aspect. You do something this year. Again, I talked about the original cooling towers. They had us design the project that they can replace the cooling tower per year. Okay, so that meant for 3 years I was going to be doing projects, and we had to keep coming back and changing the drawings to show after one cell was in, had that as existing, the next one had to come out, etc. But it's what they wanted. Would I have loved to have done all 3? Yeah, but they didn't have the money at that particular time. Does it make sense what I'm talking about? Understand what they want. And then there is this is the one that you'll start to see, not performance contracting funds it, and then there's lease options. You'll start to see that it's becoming more and more popular, especially in school boards and things like that, where they don't have any money and they'll go through some lease where they get it put in and they have to lease it out for so many years. All right, how do we get there from here? I think you need to understand that there are all kinds of, like what I'm saying here is that remember that your commitment to success is an important thing, no matter what you want to do. But you're not really sure how any project is going to turn out. You have to understand what the projects are. And I'll give you a good example of it. People do lighting retrofits all the time. And then they'll see, but they don't look at it as a holistic thing. Why don't they look at it as a holistic? Well, they'll go and they're going to save X amount of dollars. It's easily something you can calculate, right? You know how much it's going to cost you to change the lights. You have an idea of how many hours they operate. But you never take the building that I just talked about that had T12s in it. Now, in Miami, it probably was a help to get rid of the T12s. But if you were in Iowa, or in Chicago, or in New York, it became a bigger issue. Anybody tell me why it's a bigger issue if I'm taking the T12s out and I don't look at anything else? Oh, one at a time?
Might need more boiler plant.
Exactly. Everybody understand that? All right, so you may have saved $10, and I'm going to use real simple numbers. You may have saved $10 on your lighting a year, but it's going to cost you $6 more in heating because you didn't take that into account. So now you have a truly a $4 savings. Okay, so if you don't look at it holistic, one thing. Now in Florida, it's not as big of a deal. We do have, winter. It occurs for like 2.5 hours, like every other month in January, and in February. But that's about it. We don't have cold weather for the most part. But if you're in where it's colder, much time, take that into account when you're putting it. That's one of the reasons things fail. Well, I like to say, and I think this is true, under promise and over perform. It's real easy if you do more than you told your client you were going to do. You never get it back if you say you're going to do this and you can't do it. If you really think about it, well, this task is kind of like reading the tea leaves if you don't understand why something is going to happen. All right. one of the things, are all ECMs ever successful? All right, see, I knew somebody would like so. I knew it. Now, I will tell you right now, anybody here from PLC, you cannot tell the marketing department I have all these animated GIFs in here, because I may get fired because of it. Now, you're going to see some interesting things here. They don't achieve full potential, right? Look at that. An average, retro commissioning projects underachieved by a projected goal by a factor of 2. That is a nationwide average. Whoop. Sometimes the strategies for ECM contribute to the failure. The one I just told you is one of them. Okay? I know everybody likes that little dog falling in the hole, but we have to leave them alone. All right. Why do they do not achieve? You don't, first one I just talked about, you do not look at something holistically. You must look at it holistically. Everything has a domino effect. And if you ignore it, it doesn't work. One of the things that we have seen traditionally, almost all audits have an HVAC lighting slant, because they think that's where all the bodies are buried and that's where you're going to save all the money. Not always the case, not at all. I think you have to look at everything, and believe it or not, look at what I put here, education. People need to understand why you're doing something so they can get on board with it, right? The building envelope, to some of the folks here in the room, is really an important thing. If you look at the energy of a building, if you look at all the different things, lights and so on, takes up 28% of the total pie. That's a big thing. So you've got to make sure your envelope isn't leaking. You put in the best windows you can. You got good insulation in the roof. Those are one of those things that you have to look at it all. And then understand the rating systems, right? We all, depending on where you are, there's all kinds of rating systems. LEED is about to change on their, what they used to call E-bomb or O&M, O plus M. Now we're going to 4.1, which is going to be more of a performance-based one. Understand before you recommend them to your clients. All right. Everything works on working together, but understand your projects. Okay? An office building is different than retail, and I'm not going to read it all, but everyone is different. But let me tell you, if you are lucky enough to get into the industrial, and I'm not talking about a warehouse, I'm talking about where you're doing pharmaceutical. That is industrial in my opinion. You're doing clean rooms. You're in a different realm. You need to understand it because it has major ramifications if you don't. Because when you're talking about something that has a pressure differential of 0.05 between the ante rooms to get in and out, and if they don't work right, like for pharmaceutical, the FDA shuts them down, and they lose $5 million a day because they were shut down for a day. That's a big deal. All right. Sometimes ECMs are don't save you any money. Well, I'm just going to tell you about one of them right here. There's a color rendering index for lighting. Okay, does anybody here know, besides the Sparkies, that know what a color rendering index is? All right, a few people know. Okay, basically it's the light Kelvin, correct, of the bulb. Well, if you get why would I even care about this? Why is that a lighting improvement that improves productivity? Well, there's been enough studies that say if lighting color rendering index is 78 or less, some people have headaches, some people have a lot of different things going on with them. What does that do? It reduces productivity of your employees. So there's one, by changing the bulbs out on a systematic basis to something to like an 85 or 90, you're going to get more productivity out of it. I'm looking at, Craig is going to tell me I'm full of crap. I know that. He'll tell me that later. Just don't do it in front. Don't embarrass me in front of everybody, will you? Thank you. But I'm saying, that's what you got to look at. Sometimes there are non-energy benefits. All right. You know, I've strongly believed for as long as I've been doing almost anything in my life, it all takes a team to get everything done. You know, as my dad, when I was a young boy, Professor Soul used to tell me, one hand washes the other, both hands wash the face. It has to be done together. Or I used to say, together everybody achieves more. That's what I look at team as, all right? I've had people say, well, you know, how could you spell the team? Well, I've had people spell them with me and all kinds of other things. I want to shoot them when they do that, but I guess you can ruin something. But the whole point is, I think you have to understand all the players because they're all involved. No matter how small the role is, they need to be involved in what you have going on. All right? Does anybody have any questions? Because I think, Nick, you are up to bat.
I was going to start with a quick survey just for the heck of it. Because obviously I got a bit of an introduction already. And, I used to be a design engineer, and I did commissioning for a while. And I was in that world for about 20 years. And then I came over to the DTCC, and now I'm on the owner side. So just wanted to get a feel, are we all commissioning engineers in the room? Any building owners in the room? We got one. How about some facility managers like JLL, Cushman & Wakefield, CBRE? Oh, good. I can pick on them. So, anyway, so just wanted to get a feel for that because there is when I came into DTCC, I had this grandiose vision of what I was going to do and all this. I started in 2013, and I still am. I'm very enthusiastic about energy conservation and sustainability and all that. And I did it in my last job. And I was like, this is going to be great. Now I'm the owner. I can do whatever I want. And that's just not the case. It's not the case at all.
Surprise.
Surprise. They only gave me a signing authority of about $75,000. So anyway, there's other people in the organization that need to be a part of this. And that's what I wanted to kind of walk through with you is, I agree 100% with everything Al said here, and I was going to my portion of this is just going to give you a perspective of what I was working on the same time Al was working on his part. And, like he said, we were a team since this started in 2013. No. Yeah, 2013. And then it really caught some traction in 2015, 2016. But we've been a team since then, and we played off each other. And he helped me, give me the tools to sell these projects to senior management. So, really briefly, if anybody that doesn't really know what we do, the main point that I wanted to get across is, we are financial services. We're systemically important to the stock exchanges and a lot of financial transactions and activities. But the point I wanted to make is, we need 100% uptime. We cannot go down. We have oodles of resilience in all of our facilities. We have backups of backups. We have sites all around the world. Any one site can go down and work is immediately transferred to another site, so there's no interruption. So, that we provide stability to the financial market. And, like when years ago when Lehman Brothers had problems, we made sure, stability was there and the market closed out. So the point is uptime, 100% uptime. So Al had to do all of these projects and not interrupt any of our core functions.
And you need to understand that Nick had 3 or 4 generators. 3, right?
3.
Great, yeah, 3 generators, and they're back up to back, and then there's 5,000, that's 15,000 gallons of fuel oil. So if you get an idea, like, they want to make sure they can run for a month when that happens. It's a big deal.
So I had a pretty simple goal back in 2015, and I just came into this and I said that I wanted to save 10% of my global energy consumption by the end of 2018. So, we did this in a variety of ways, and we attacked a few different sites, and we're going to kind of focus on the Tampa project here today. But I did have a goal going in. It was loose, but it was defined, and it was a little better than what I had in 2013 when I started, because I will admit that in 2013 I didn't get it off the ground when I first started. I tried to get a sustainability effort at DTCC going, and it just didn't go anywhere. I didn't have the support. I didn't sell it well enough. So but come 2 years later, I had some more tools in my bag, and with Al's help, we were able to sell it. So some of the key things that we looked at from my perspective were just engagement. We always kept an eye on the project specifics. As Al mentioned, I have a background in engineering, and so do quite a few people on my team. So we're very, we work really closely with Al. We're the opposite of a client that's going to be hands off and just take a report from you, and they may or may not read it.
Oh yeah, he reads them, he highlights them, he points out all the words I spelled wrong. He's great.
Yeah, but you're all design professionals in the room, and you're all very good at what you do. And do 100% of your commissioning proposals to clients get accepted? Probably not. Do 100% of your commissioning projects, are they successful? Probably not. If they are, kudos, you're the elite. You probably don't even need to be here, because you're that good. But the point is that there's a lot of reasons why these things fail, and I think a good portion of it could fall on the client, on me, on how well of a job I'm doing at getting these projects sold to management. So a little bit of background: we did 3 energy audits at 3 of our different sites in the U.S. all around the same time. It wasn't exactly the same time, but roughly, Tampa, New Jersey, and Texas, and we had varying results, significantly varying results. And Tampa was one of the best ones. And I'm going to try to highlight a few of the things why I think Tampa was successful, because about the only constant in all 3 of those projects was me. But as Al mentioned, there's a huge team that's involved in all of these things. I have my own staff that work for me. I have building operators, I have building engineers, I have maintenance contractors, and all those sorts of things. And I have different design consultants. I mean, now Al works for me in New Jersey just because, he does so well. But but when I did the audit in Jersey, Al was not my consultant. He wasn't the design consultant, nor was he the commissioning agent. And but I'm not going to say it was a failure. It certainly wasn't. We saved some energy, but not to the magnitude that we were hoping. And I'll highlight throughout this why I think it didn't happen. So engagement, first one, senior management engagement. As I made early on, I said, I might be the relationship manager with Al in this case, but I can't make all the decisions. I need to have my senior management engaged in this project. And that's why it didn't get off the ground in 2013. It took a couple of years till I had to sell it to him. I had to tell him why we wanted to be environmentally responsible. We're going to save some money if we do this, and we're going to improve some productivity through making our building occupants a little happier. And then we get down to the at the site level. So in the business stakeholders and building occupants. So at the Tampa project level, we have a Tampa operating committee. So I needed their engagement because they want to have a say in what goes on in their site, and they're also the business leads, the business units of all the different financial services that are happening in that building, and we need their engagement too, because however you want to play it, in order to, our approach was, and this was probably the only approach that made it as successful as it was, is we did a lot of things during business hours, and as much as we could. And the way we did that was I met with the operating committee once a month, and some of the slides that I'll show you in here as examples, I presented to the operating committee every time, and I gave them progress updates on what we're doing, and they were pretty excited about the project, and they were excited about, I showed them that, as we finished some facility improvements, what they saved. I was showing them our energy bills and tracking metrics and all that. But I kept them excited, I kept them enthusiastic, and they were the business leads that in turn were managing all the people in the building. So it helped us get their buy-in. It helped, we had less complaints. Yeah, we had some contractors working during the day, but people were excited about it. So they overlooked the inconvenience and everybody went on. We also have a CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility Department within our HR group. I was tightly aligned with them so that they can, because they report on, like things like diversity and inclusion and all the volunteer hours that DTCC does and all those sorts of things. So I stayed tight with them. So I had their buy-in, and of course the building occupants. We did emails, signage, desk drops. So when we were doing, if we were working in their area, we had posters up on the wall describing the project, how much energy they're going to save as a result of this project, and things like that, just to get a little bit of buy-in. And you'd be surprised at how many people would reach out to us and say, hey, how can we get involved? Is there anything we can do to help reduce the energy consumption of our facility? So, while Al was working on, his side of thing, I had to do all these things just to sell this project. Because in the beginning, in 2016 or 15, when we started the energy auditing process, that was just step one. So Al's working on that. I'm working on this. We have a budget in mind of what we want to spend, and we need to sell it. Al mentioned having an entire team involved, right down to the building engineers and the maintenance staff and the building operators, and that is just so important because a couple of things happened to us. I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that. I don't know if anybody's going to see this video at work, but we had a union building engineer up in the Northeast on day one when I started talking about an audit, and he was kind of a crotchety guy, and he's close to retirement, not much interest in he was just getting by, and he said energy audits are the biggest waste of money. I've seen dozens of these things in my career, and they never save any money. You're wasting your money. Don't do it. And he was also the guy that was defeating our algorithms in our BMS. He was turning off the supplier reset schedule because in his mind, he thought that he could manually set it and make the building operate better and all those sorts of things. So, that's why engagement all the way down to the operators is so important. Because if I had him behind the scenes sabotaging me, and I think, we weren't as successful in our Northeast audit. I think that's one of the reasons why. We didn't have engagement all the way down to the level, but he's gone now. So, things are better. Even the building. You're
surrounded by assassins and you can't help it.
So even like the building operations team, like my team, we've had some, I have varying levels of folks on my team. I have engineers, I have not engineers, I have people that have managed buildings for 25 years and tons of, practical experience, and so when I started talking about, LED lighting or, supplier reset schedules or monitoring outdoor air, any of those things, I would get answers like, well, we've looked at LED lighting 10 years ago and it didn't work. And I'm like, well, I'm sure technology hasn't changed in 10 years. Maybe we ought to look at it again. So, those are the kinds of pushback you got. And if you don't have the engagement of your own team, then you're not going to get very far. And it really showed in, it's really a testament to the team here in Tampa, including Al and his team. Because at the end of this, I'll give you a little snapshot of where we ended up. But it's just engagement across all levels is so important. All right. And then I just have just a couple samples. I'm not going to talk about this. This was just some things this is a snapshot of a presentation I did probably about 50 times to senior management to sell this project, just to tell them that it was more than just me asking for money. We actually had some strategy to it. We outlined some benefits and why we should do it, saving money, reduce carbon footprint, energy efficiency, all those sorts of things, how we're going to get it done, et cetera. So, we had to build this business case and we weren't going to get anywhere. And, we worked a lot with Al on some of these things, especially on the numbers and the cost estimating. So, we really were a team from day one. Again, this is a presentation I did to some of the site level business managers, just to keep them aware of, hey, this is what we've done so far, this is what's coming up, this is how much we saved. Just a way to say thank you to them, like, thanks for your patience, thank you for your support. Because of you, we were able to achieve these things. That our occupants have had a little bit of inconvenience, but look what we've accomplished. And I did these kinds of things once a month to the operating committees of the facility. So just keeping everybody engaged, keeping everybody in the loop. Here's a dashboard that we distributed to just, it's kind of like one of those things, you don't know if you're winning or losing until you start taking score. So we're big on that, keeping score and letting everybody know. And in this case, we were socializing successes just to keep the enthusiasm up, because once the novelty wears off and the enthusiasm level drops, you tend to get a little less engagement. But I was really pleased with how everybody stayed engaged throughout. Some of the project specifics. Have a baseline. We already went through that. Tampa, I started out, although my global goal was 10%, my Tampa goal was 25%. We wanted to reduce our operating costs in the form of energy savings, also reduce our maintenance costs, which is kind of I'll go off on a tangent quickly, but that's how I sold some of these projects, especially some of the lighting upgrades. We were at end of life and all of our lighting ballasts were starting to fail, and we had a lot of, in a portion of the building, we had some dimming fluorescent ballasts that are starting to fail, and they're really expensive to replace. So I was building that into my payback analysis, because if I'm going to spend money on replacing a ballast on an old fixture, why not spend a few more bucks and get a new fixture and that's higher efficiency and longer warranties and stuff like that. So I made a joke earlier that my team looked at LED lighting 10 years ago and it didn't work, but now it works. We have some LED lights that have 10-year warranties. They're around 120 lumens per watt or something like that. It's really awesome. So it's just far from where it was a decade ago. Not every building's eligible. I know that from my perspective, when I was just looking at all my buildings, I was trying to look at whether or not we own them or lease them. If we lease them, how long is the lease term? Am I going to get any of my money back if I do invest? I was looking at a lot of metrics that I've been tracking back since 2015, cost per square foot, usage per square foot, all those kinds of things. Are there incentives available? And are older assets at end of life? Am I going to need to replace an asset anyway? And why not do something with put a little efficiency spin on it? But together with Al, we did determine that Tampa was a good candidate, and we forged ahead. And then on the choosing the ECMs, the only thing I'll say here is that we looked at total cost of ownership. We didn't look at upfront costs. When we did some. We did a chiller replacement, and we didn't just go with the cheapest chiller out there. We direct purchased our chillers, and we went out to bid, and we gave them the actual load profile of our building with the help from Al, and all the manufacturers came back and gave us their chiller selections based on our operating loads. So we did look at, and we didn't choose the cheapest chiller either. We looked at the total cost of ownership over the life of that chiller, including maintenance and all that.
Based on a 25-year life cycle, and we looked at the operating profile of the chiller, so everything was done in real time, based on true operating, not AHRI conditions, based on Tampa Vanessa water conditions. These were water-cooled chillers, so this was real. And at the end, you can look at what the true ownership of the equipment was.
I think another thing to reinforce one of Al's points earlier, he had talked about looking at projects holistically, and we actually chose to do our chiller at the end of our project. We did retro commissioning first. We did a lot of LED lighting upgrades first. Because we completely changed the load profile of our building. And then to add to that, our building, we bought it from Intermedia, but it was built to be a data center, completely over-designed. The chiller plant was completely over-designed for what we needed. They were way oversized, so we took the opportunity to get to the point where we had a new load profile in our building. We selected the chillers based on the new load profile, but we waited till the end to do that. Al didn't push the chiller project right out of the gate. We did a lot of other things first. This is just a sample of how I tried to keep my team engaged. I truncated this because there was some private information on there, and my marketing group wouldn't let me put it out. But this was basically a scoreboard, and I had people's names on here, and I had start dates, end dates, and different people on my team were responsible for these different facility improvement measures, and that's how I kept score. And we had weekly meetings to look at how are we doing, what was the anticipated end date, where are we on schedule, are we off schedule. And then another point is I have a relatively small team for for how much I manage. So we have day jobs too. We still have to operate the building, but this was an extra project that we all took on, and so trying to be considerate of that. People are really busy, so what I asked them to do is just on a weekly basis. I know that 90% of your time, maybe 80-90% of your time, you have a day job to do, but just give me 10 to 20% every single week on this effort, and make some commitment to me every week that you're going to get something done. What is the most important thing to do on one of these ECMs to make progress on it? And this is what we used during the implementation process when we had contractors on site to implement all this stuff and just get it done. Just use it for tracking. Again, you don't know if you're winning or losing it unless you're keeping score. Now we get on to this measure and validation stage. I'm trying to remember the words you used earlier, Al. Overcommit and undercommit and all that. So
Undercommit and overachieve.
Yeah. So back in 2016, Al told me that I was going to have an electric, after it's all said and done, he told me my electric bill was going to go from, I think it was around, at the time it was around a little over $500,000, maybe it was like $525,000 or $505,000, I don't remember. Actually, I wrote it down here. 508. So it was $508,000 a year when we started this project, and Al told me my electric bill was going to get down to $220,000 a year, so that's a savings of $288,000. So I'll just make Al sweat for a little while, because he doesn't know how we ended up. I never told him. So because we're still finishing projects up. Like the chillers just came online in the Q4, and we threw a BAS upgrade in there too, so that's still getting tweaked. So that was something I would do differently. We did a retro commissioning. In hindsight, I probably would have did my BAS upgrade first and then did a retro commissioning, but whatever. So we're still tweaking some things, and we're still saving. It's trending down, and I'll give you an idea where we're at the end of this. We'll see how good Al's number was. But identifying the metrics, was keeping them consistent. Like I said, we've been tracking things since 2015. There's a variety of things, and I think it's on another slide. And then we have monthly meetings. Like I met with the site teams, so the site leads of each site on a monthly basis, and we would look at all of our energy metrics and all the data we've collected off our energy bills, and that was a big thing to get into the culture. I had terrible engagement in the beginning. Nobody was doing it, and it was just, I guess they looked at it as busy work. I don't know, but it's just so important. You know, you don't know if you're winning or losing unless you're looking at it. And we found some things, like as we got into it and we started looking at this, we had like a spike in water usage the 1 month, and we found out one of our cooling tower floats were stuck, and it was dumping a little bit of water at night when nobody was there, and we didn't know about it. So, but you know, that's how we caught those kinds of things. And that's kind of like a kudos. You know, I'm big on this FDD stuff. So if there's any FDD guys in the room, that's my next step. I'm really excited about, you know, that fault detection and all that kind of stuff. That's my next step in what I want to get going in my facilities. Socialize and share the, you know, successes and failures from team to team. You know, so I made sure that the Jersey people and the Dallas people and the Tampa people were all on the same page. We all knew who was doing what was working at the different sites, so that we could try to duplicate it. And then share the results with the building occupants. That's why we created those dashboards. We wanted people engaged. We wanted them to see how we're doing, because we wanted them to stay excited about the project. And then, you know, lastly, just stay flexible and adaptive, because not everything works. So you might have to, you know, zig when you zagged. Who knows? And then just more on the socialization. I already mentioned this. I was constantly keeping the operating committee up to date. Signage, desk drops, posters, dashboards, sharing success stories, and then we get down to the end. This is kind of present day, defining next steps. You know, what's Al going to do for me next? You know, we're going to work on a formal corporate sustainability policy. And you know, in the past, we had a goal, and we achieved that goal, and now we're moving on. What's the next goal? So one of the next steps is we want to formalize a sustainability policy. And we want to have, you know, some design standards in place, because our real estate group and our leasing group's different from my group, unfortunately. So, you know, to end up, you know, I'd like to have a say in the shell that we end up leasing, because they're not created equally. You know, that's one of the problems with my Jersey site. It's got electric baseboard heat, and it's terrible. And then what's our next goal? This is just an example of metrics we tracked for each one of our sites, and then it fed up into our dashboards. I shared success stories with, you know, just to try to keep people on my team engaged, because, you know, when we were doing projects, we actually had people in the office space walking around, talking to people, asking them how they're doing, asking them what they think of the project, and just trying to keep them excited about it. And then this is some of the feedback we got from people. They loved it. And, you know, this is just a snapshot. We had, you know, dozens and dozens of emails come into our group on how happy people were with the results. And we did that not only during like the LED lighting upgrades, but also when we were working with the HVAC system. If we were monkeying with the controls, and maybe they were working on things and they didn't have it dialed in just yet. It might have been we might have had hot, cold. We had people walking around just managing everyone's expectations, telling them, hey, just be patient, we'll be done soon. But we gave them timelines. We told them when we were going to be done and when we were going to get fixed and all that sort of thing. This is just kind of our timeline. We already talked about all this, but energy audit in 16, we did the retro commissioning in 17, some LED lighting, some chillers, controls, and a UPS replacement. Brings us to present day. And this is just a bit of a summary. Starting out in 2015, my baseline year was 16, but in 15 we were at 554,000, and it just keeps going down. And then for the past 4 months, I've been trending, you know, pretty consistent at around a 58% reduction from my baseline year. So if I prorate that out for the remainder, because we just, admittedly, we just finished some projects in Q4. If I prorate that out to the end of this year, it's trending pretty well for the past 4 months, so I think it's pretty consistent. Like, I think I'm gonna be somewhere around $234,000 for my annual electricity costs. And Al told me 221, but I think that's really good.
And I must say, when I did that calculation, I think it was based on 9 cents a kilowatt. and you're now down to about 7, if I remember right.
Well, here's the other thing is we're not done yet. We didn't finish all the LED lighting. We're still tweaking the BMS, but point is, Al gave me some good numbers, and it worked out. So, but it doesn't always work out, and I didn't meet some targets in some of my other sites, but I think it was, lack of engagement, lack of, we had different design consultants. I had a design consultant walk away from a project because he was out of money on the project, and now I got that, so I hired Al to finish it. It's just, there's a variety of things that happen. There's so many people on the team that, and it's not any one person that can make them successful. But I just kind of want to give you a snapshot on how we came about coming to present day. And this is just our present day dashboard. It's on our internal intranet site. But that's probably about it. Any questions?
I do have one, Nick, where it says Energy Star score of 85. Was that done prior to the September 18 change for Energy Star? The reason I ask that is because if anybody does any benchmarking, the Energy Star scores in office buildings went down 12 points across the board, just about. So if that was done after it has an 85, that meant that building, by the old standard, would have been 95. That's the only reason I asked that question.
That's through the end of Q4, so that incorporates the change.
So that meant had it been under the old regime of doing things, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I understand that would have been a 95 event.
And just, I don't know if you can read that, but when we started this, I can't even read this. Energy Star score was 57 when we started our project. So, it's just kudos to the entire team.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
It's to you. My definition of the great starting point for energy savings is a calibrated energy model. I'll bet you didn't do that. So would you speak to how you can be confident about energy savings that are holistic?
Well, we try to be nice. Why did you assume we didn't do a calibrated energy model?
Well, you do.
Well,
Did you?
Yes, we did.
Whoa.
So we actually did and it turned out was, when Nick, if you look back, Nick showed we did a chiller plant study for them, because they were N+2 at that point, right? Not N+1, they were N+2. So the data coming from the BMS trending wise, which would have been good to tell us what the chillers needed to be, wasn't very good data. So we actually built a extensive IESVE energy model to be able to look at the loads in great detail. And you're right, we probably, just to tell you the truth, we probably would have not, because a lot of the things we were going to do didn't require the true calibrated model, but we wound up having it, so that's why we used it. As we created one, not that we intended to create one, but we did because we had to, how could I come up with this profile if I couldn't get one from the building itself? So we wound up doing one. It was very detailed, and actually the building, we could have put in 3 250-ton machines, so you have an N+1. We want to go with 3 300-ton machines, and I firmly believe it won't be until about July before the second machine ever comes on. Between all the lighting changes, all the retro commissioning that was done, operational things, static pressure reset, temperature reset, will probably, like I said, they'll operate on one machine, I think, most of the time.
And just to jog your memory a little bit, Al, I mentioned early on that I started this in 2013 and I couldn't get it off the ground. And with Al's collaboration, that we intentionally did that calibrated energy model because I needed to sell it to senior management. And they weren't, they wanted real data. They wanted something to look at, something to put in their hands. They're business people. They're not facility managers. DTCC is not in the business of managing facilities. They're in the financial services industry. They don't know anything about this other stuff. So all it was a number to them. I was asking them to spend a few $1 million, and they wanted a little more than just just me saying, hey, it's a great idea.
Sure.
So that's why we did that calibrated energy models as one of the first steps in 2015 to sell this project to and increase that engagement that I talked about.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a breakdown as to which ECM saves the most savings?
Yes, we did. The way we do them is we have, Nick, I think we had 20 different ECMs, and then we had also FIM, which are facility improvement measures. We had I want to say it was in the 20s, and I think you picked, I don't say they picked 11. There was some they were to self-perform, like the, you guys wound up doing the UPS in-house, but so the ones that they picked, so it was probably 11 out of the 20 or so that they did. There was one there that Nick showed that there was no savings, that there was a potential of savings, but they didn't do it. Was the one about temperature. We did an extensive, ASHRAE 55. I didn't do anything. My staff did great. But they did an extensive 55 to show in different offices where in the building they can go from what they were operating at, in some places 74 or 73, where they can go to 75 or 78, and how much energy that would save. So
Probably one of the biggest ones was the retro commissioning out.
What's that?
One of the biggest savings was the retro
Right, yeah,
commissioning.
sure. Retro commission, I think, was about a year.
It's like a year payback.
Yep.
So
And it's funny, one of the things is, when we did that, we started out, we were gonna do 25% of the VAV boxes, and then after we did the 25% and almost 100% of them were non-calibrated, we now had to do 100% of them. So it's things that you find out when you get into, and that calibration saves money, whether you realize we found thermostats that weren't right. There were a lot of different things that help to tune the building up. Yes, Chuck?
Since we did the testing and balancing there.
Think about it, Chuck.
A little plug there. I'd like to have some of this energy savings information because we're part of the team. And our fellows were endeavoring every day with your people out there and your staff. And we love to hear this because our technicians, a lot of times, they hear the complaints, but they don't hear the positive side. And we had a couple fellows that were really young and endeavoring into your project. And this energy savings
Justin was great.
relating to the VAV boxes. And the key thing is when we did this energy stuff over the years, the key thing that you have done here, you saved energy and you maintain comfort.
mhm.
And that's the key thing. But anyway, if you would now,
Sure.
I'd like to give that out to our people.
Yeah, sure. I mean, another little plug for CETA. I mentioned early on that we did a lot of stuff during business hours to save money because we wanted the best possible payback. And Justin from CETA, he was amazing. He was out there doing tab during business hours with people sitting in the desk right next to him. And he's a likable guy. They loved him. So
Yeah,
it went really well.
Yeah, I have to stand on your desk.
So
Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
You said your initial approach was 25% of the VAV boxes, and then you found that you really didn't do 100%.
Yes, ma'am.
There's been some white papers about testing, only a certain percentage VAV boxes, and every time I tested a certain percent, I just feel like there's so many things wrong, even on new construction, that you need to do 100%. Are you now changing your approach since you went through that?
All right, the answer to your question is no, and the reason why is because, like Nick, if I went and I said I was gonna do 100% of the boxes, his first thing is gonna come back, do I have to do 100? I said, no, let's do 25%. I'm not one of those that goes along with the 10%, because that's not enough. 25% is a good representative sample. So if out of 25, when you vary them throughout the building, and out of 25%, you get 1 or 2, that's a real small sample. In this case, out of the 25%, I would say 90, listen, right, about 90, 95% were wrong. And this is on an existing building, so we're gonna get it. But then at that point, I went to Nick and I said, Nick, we need to spend more money, we need to do this. He didn't go, no, we can't do it. He agreed and went ahead and did it. But I'd rather them, them buy in when we need to do it, not do it, and if we don't need to do it. And I hope that makes sense. And on new construction, we only do 25%, but if we, again, the same thing happens, we usually tell them, go back, you need to rebalance everything, and then we'll do a different 25% the next time. We have the same problem. That's when I usually tell them I'm gonna take my basketball and go home, and I have to ask them to do this all over. So at that point, when you tell them they have to redo it, they're gonna have to do 100% of them, because now I'm not gonna go back to the same 25% I went originally. So that's how I handle it. I can't speak for anybody else.
I think the age of our building played into that a lot too.
Sure.
We had an old continuum control system at the time, and I don't remember the numbers, but I think we ended up finding out of like 220 VAVs, like 40 or 50 of the controllers were just shot, and we had to replace them. So, I think the age of our building was definitely played into that, and the reason why we ended up having so many issues during TAB.